I've been thinking on adding another video for September despite doing Foster's Week again earlier this month, but like I said in the first video of that week, I'm still going through the tradition of doing 2 videos per week from my own choosing, and thinking about this episode a lot more. Hashtag knockout from Sam and Cat. This episode, despite being one of the final episodes of this show, and what ended up happening behind the scenes when it comes to Jennette McCurdy, still had potential of being a great episode, but also possibly another 1 hour special for Sam and Cat, mainly 44 minutes. The episode begins with Gumo arriving at Sam and Kat's house again, and said that someone is bullying him, and this leads to Sam admitting that no one picks on her dumb friends. In all honesty, judging of how the dialogue is delivered in this show, this is a lot more dumbed down than any of the Disney sitcoms that are meant to be dumbed down. The person that Gumo is getting bullied is by Rita, but in reality, Rita, while being an MMA champion, is really nice, and Gumo doesn't really see that, and Sam and Kat are trying to have them have a normal conversation with her, but at the same time, also have him go out with her since that Gumo has a crush on Rita. After Gumo succeeds, this leads to Sam facing off Rita due to Rita's opponent still in the hospital after she beaten her up really bad. And after Sam beats Rita with 1 punch, this gave her attraction, which leads to a rematch between Sam and Rita, which means that Sam has a training teacher named Bubs Dixon. This is where the episode reached to a screeching halt because the rest is Bubs training Sam, and then towards the end, Sam just ditches the fight because she prefers her own life. But at the same time, with how the pacing and structure of this episode went through when it came to Gumo's crush towards Rita, ends up going nowhere, and this just leads to Sam facing Rita again, but with no structure or development whatsoever throughout the second half of this episode. This is why I think that this episode should have been 44 minutes, but at the same time, should have been more executed and full of respect when it comes to the writing and characters, because this episode had potential, and yet it still fails. From someone who enjoyed I Fight Shelby Marks, which was the season 2 finale of iCarly, and then when we come to here that has the same similarities from that episode when it comes to boxing, and the fact that Sam is a fan of Shelby Marks, but is also fully aware of Rita herself, and yet she is really not interested into doing any boxing or anything. Honestly, guys, this is where I feel like that despite what Sam thinks when it comes to her life towards the end, it still would have made this episode more better if they actually respect Sam's character a lot more, but at the same time, they didn't, and that also includes the people working on this show not respecting Jennette McCurdy whatsoever, especially what she's been going through. I'm gonna be really honest with you guys. My critiques towards Gumo for how he was betrayed was way too harsh, and I really feel like the actor did enjoy this performance, but at the same time, for how Sam and Cat was structured back then, it really made it difficult for me to consider Gumo as a positive. And for someone who we watched Quentin's reviews of Sam and Cat who he really enjoys Gumo's character a lot to the point that he is a Gumo defender, then I always feel like that for how Gumo is structured in this show. He should have been in a different show with better writing and better characters, because with how Sam and Cat didn't really adjust their own show better as the series progressed, it really gave me the impression that this would have happened mainly on Henry Danger, even if it may happen later. But I can easily say that if Henry Danger did a plot like this, well, Frankini actually has encounters with Rita herself and Guma has a crush towards her, then I'm pretty sure that the writing from that environment will have been better structured than basically anything else in this episode. And that's really saying a lot that the potential of this episode just isn't given justice. Even though the actor playing Rita Rooney isn't really that popular in the real world, at least from my knowledge, I have to admit that she really plays the character really good on being portrayed as a professional fighter, to the point that she is literally on the same levels as Shelby Marks when Victoria Justice played her. And for me personally, the chemistry between Sam and Rita would have been better executed if they focus on that separately with a longer running time rather than 22 minutes. Because every time I see Rita Rooney in this episode, she really feels like a character that can easily make this episode a lot more better and more interesting, and making this a different version of the I Fight Shelby Marks episode. As in, being original than having the same formulas from that special. The issue is that this episode, along with every other Sam and Cat episode, is that it is rushed. There is no multiple drafts in order to make the story better. There's no time to fix any mistakes, and Dan Schneider is banned from the studio when it came to his allegations. And with him being inside of a man cave or something where he has to look at 4 separate monitors and he has to have an assistant in order to take notes to bring back into the studio, which leads to the filming days being 13 hours to 17 hours. There isn't any other studio when it comes to sitcoms that were this toxic and dreadful to go through. Like, every time I think about the behind the scenes of Sam and Cat before more information came out, I always get the impression that Jennette McCurdy and Ariana Grande are too old to be playing these roles, to the point that doing a spin-off wasn't really the best idea. But after looking into it a lot more, it really gave me the impression that this show got cancelled due to so much going on, to the point that the characters getting older isn't really an issue. It's mainly one of them having popularity when it comes to music, while the other is going through so much misery that it's just difficult for me to consider on what Jennette McCurdy's life would have been like if she never had the role of Sam Puckett. When it comes to Bubs Dixon, honestly, she really tries to make this a lot more entertaining, to the point that there's a reason onto why critic reviews found her something that you can't look away. But at the same time, this also showcases of how little passion this entire episode is, due to everyone else just rushing everything just to get this all over with. I mean, to be honest, if this show did have a second season, which they did announce, but ended up canceling it, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a lot more dreadful, and there wouldn't be a lot of Ariana Grande to have on stage. In all honesty, I think that giving Jennette McCurdy her own show, despite never being on board with it, would have been somewhat a little bit more better, without anyone getting in her way. And speaking of Ariana Grande in this episode, she spends her time watching the Dark Channel. And news. Saying it 4 times. And with how little that she gets due to the actor being really famous and having the opportunity to skip script readings and other things, honestly, just seeing Ariana Grande in the final episodes of the show, she just isn't as special as an actress than her singing career, because this honestly made me show that having her as the co-star in a spin-off isn't really the best idea, and Jennette McCurdy's grudge towards her, especially her fame, honestly, she has every right to feel that way. And when it comes to Gumo being upset that Rita hates him after Sam knocks her out, and this leads to Noel, in all honesty, this is more of a reason onto why it was difficult for me to find Gumo's character sympathetic, because without any execution or screen time centering around this arc that he has with Rita, then I can't really feel sympathy towards him. Granted, he's not terrible as I thought back then, but at least the appreciation I can give is the least I can receive, despite the fact that the execution of this episode didn't succeed at making him more likable with how little that he gets. Now, putting aside the ending, which, to be fair, it's not the worst ending from this show, but at the same time it's not good either. The more I look into Jennette McCurdy's book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, is that the creator, which is Dan Schneider, gave her the opportunity to direct 1 episode, and it was locked as one of the final episodes. Honestly, Jennette McCurdy really wants to prove to people that she is more than an actor, and I can easily understand that she really wants that opportunity. But on one fateful Monday, well, her name gets written off, which is basically the people writing N.A. instead of her name, she ends up feeling a lot more worse, thinking that she probably did something wrong, when in reality, she didn't. So when the day came, well, she is so fed up on being the good sport and just ends up getting so much bad treatment from the network in general. She ends up getting a panic attack in this location in this show, mainly the training boxing area. I could assume that this incident happened in the first scene where they go to the boxing training area where Ariana Grande is with them, or the second where Ariana Grande wasn't with them. And another comparison is that in the first scene there isn't a lot of extras, but in the second scene there are multiple extras. I also think that this scene, which is the 3rd time they go to the boxing training area, since that Jennette describes in the book that she was wearing a costume that was kind of sluggish, and Guma was with her, so I can instantly feel like that with how everything is structured, it could be a possibility, but at the same time, the lines that Jennette has in this clip wasn't really that difficult for me to handle, and in a physical sense, well, she has to fight the other actor when it comes to boxing. Honestly, there really wasn't any fake fighting when it comes to choreography, when it comes to how she stated in her book, so it could either be the first or second scene. And witnessing that Guma's actor was the one that took Jennette to her dressing room after the panic attack, honestly, I really gave this character a little bit more slack to the point that it was difficult for me to find the actor more sympathetic. So I really feel like that the actor really took pride into playing Gumo's character a lot more and showing his respect towards Jennette McCurdy, because if he wasn't the one who took her to a dressing room, then I'm pretty sure that no one else would. Well, aside from Patty, who came into Jennette's dressing room later on, after the incident. With the truth that a producer didn't want Jennette McCurdy to direct an episode, which leads to everyone removing Jennette from directing an episode from the sheets themselves, which is one of those pink sheets that they get every Monday, mainly the actors. Honestly, there is no sympathy or safety or healthiness in making Sam and Cat. Like, Dan Schneider is really responsible for giving Jennette McCurdy more trauma like her mother did, but at the very least, he manages to give her something that the other producers just take it away from her by putting her in the dark for so long. And I'm pretty sure that Dan Schneider wouldn't put Jennette McCurdy in the dark. And this isn't me saying that Dan Schneider is innocent, because, truth be told, if he allowed Jennette McCurdy to direct an episode without anyone in the way, Jennette wouldn't like it, but at the same time, she would at least improve on the idea on directing something that she is also capable of, rather than just being an actor. Josh Peck directed a Drake and Josh episode in the end of its series when it came to the Battle of Panther Town, and for how that episode was structured, for how hilarious it was, honestly, seeing what Jennette McCurdy would have brought to the table would have made one of the episodes that she was about to direct somewhat interesting and somewhat easy to sit through than just seeing how everything was structured. I doubt this was the episode that she wanted to direct, but it's mostly a mystery of what episode she was planned to direct, and how much of an impression that she will have made by directing that episode. If you ask me, guys, that's where the credibility of Jennette not directing an episode shows of how little care these people have when it comes to basically anything else. They don't care about the idea of Gumo being in a loving relationship with another boxer. They don't care about Jennette McCurdy being a famous boxer because they just want to showcase of how lazy she is, which it's one thing that it's part of her character, but at the same time it's never giving her character nuance, and it really shows that everything else in this show, when it comes to the behind the scenes aspect, despite with few good things here and there, mainly Guma and his actor, #knockout is one of the final missed opportunities in this show. And truth be told, it may be an exaggeration, but those are reasons onto why I never had the consideration of getting back into this show when it comes to reviewing other episodes, because reviewing the first episode isn't really something I would look forward to if I would pick the iCarly pilot or the Victoria's first episode, or even the first episode of Henry Danger, which is a 44-minute special, with the final two episodes being #We Still a Rockstar and #Getting Wiggy. Honestly, those episodes aren't really good ways to wrap up the show, and truth be told, this episode isn't either. And it's really a shame that this episode had potential, but there was just no respect or care whatsoever, to the point that looking at this show now, then my old perspective of it showcases that there was so much toxicity and depression, to the point that it did show the transition from iCarly to Henry Danger, because that's what this entire show is. With that being said, I'm giving this episode a 3.5 out of 10. It really shows that these episodes from Sam and Cat can't be able to make an impression even with the ideals that they have in order to make an episode worth sitting through if it had better writing and a better direction.